Hmm.
Mo
I'm going to
Hijab
mute.
says, "Yep, okay, but we're gonna start. We're already started here,
Oh, okay. No, I was just going to tell you I was going to mute myself.
ladies and
Going to send
gentlemen."
out.
He's gonna mute himself, but I'm still gonna do the poem.
You do your thing.
Mo Hijab says, "Fight the Christians and Jews." The Christians and Jews say he don't mean it, but what Mo Hijab says, the Quran says too. It's about time the infidels seen it. That was a little southern lingo there for you. Seen it there at the end. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome back yet again to This Week in Jihad. There's always more jihad, and so there's always more this week in jihad. And we have with us the astounding, the amazing, the peerless, and the fearless Dr. David Wood. David, are you still muted?
Yeah, I unmuted myself just to say I hereby apologize for the first time ever of interrupting the poem.
Well, the poem, it still shines forth in its glory among all other verbiage because there's no way to make one like it. You know.
I just want to say if this were my channel and I had done that to me, I would demand that I be publicly flogged for interrupting the poem.
Publicly flogged, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we'll have to call Mo Hijab for that. Anyway, I'm not sure. He might enjoy that too much. I'm not sure he's the guy I would want for that job, David. Maybe the Taliban. They would be more even-handed.
I just saw, I haven't watched it yet, but Mohammed Hijab announced that he's in some new drama series or something. So that'd be good.
He's in a drama series. Is
Yeah, he
it?
just, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I just looked at the title, but his title says, announcement. I'm in a, about to be in a new drama series, but yeah, this should be awesome.
Islamicize me
Jew,
too?
no, probably like Jew Hunter or something like that.
That's right. I can't wait. All right. There's serious business here, David. It's very serious business. Let's see. I barely know where to begin. I actually had an idea of where to begin, and now I've forgotten it. So we're just gonna just. Oh, you know what it is? We just finished Pride Month, and
Hmm.
so Pride Month being over was the occasion for quite a lot of stupid infidel activity, as you may expect. And so let's see here. These are the marchers at the Toronto Dyke March. There they are, the Dykes, and they are marching. And as they were marching, what do you think they were chanting, David?
I'm going to have to go with either free Palestine or from the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea. That is correct. And so let me ask you this. If the Toronto Dykes were to go to Gaza to
Mhm.
visit their friends and allies, what do you think might happen to them?
I think they're dead.
I think you're correct, sir.
And
They
that is why this is interesting. I mean, in Israel, gay people are safe. If Hamas were to get its way, then all the gay people, along with all the Jews, would be slaughtered. And you have gays for Palestine and all these groups, queers for Palestine, all these groups running around saying, yes, we want a group to take over that's going to completely wipe out all gay people. We're sane.
I don't get it either. It's inexplicable. You'd think that
I get
that
it. I get it.
what tell me.
I I get it. Some people think that it's these groups all rallying around anything they perceive as victim status, right? That's
Yeah.
hey, you know that group over there, they're victims too, so we're all on the same page. Even though that group of victims wants to completely exterminate your
Mhm.
group of victims, so lots of people think that it's that. I just think these guys have been flipping through the pages of the Muslim sources and reading about how Muhammad's always covered in semen and
Uh,
how he used to let people kiss him all pull up his
not
dress so guys
not
could kiss
people.
him.
Yeah, guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
guys could kiss him all over his milky white flesh, and then you got all these interesting hadiths about a guy named Diha al Kalbi,
Hmm.
who it's D that means Diha the dog, But he would be over Muhammad's house, and when people would see him leaving Muhammad's house, and he was apparently like the handsomest, most beautiful young man in Arabia. But when people would see him leaving Muhammad's house, Muhammad would say, "No, that's the angel Gabriel. Gabriel just looks exactly like Diha al-Kalbi." And so it's like, wait a minute. I think these Queers for Palestine stuff must be looking at this, going, Muhammad wasn't free during his time, but he's one of us. We know it. He just had to keep it secret because of the time. So we're going to side with his group.
Yeah. And of course, we see this all over the Islamic world. I've talked to so many military men coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they would talk about how rampant this was in these areas where they were serving, and it was taken for granted. The military people who served in Iraq used to have a term for it. They would call it Man Love Thursday. And then on Friday, the guys would go to mosque and it would all be forgiven. And so this is something that I think is not just a matter of ignoring or violating Islamic law. It's going deeper into what Islamic law really says. And Muslims read the Hadith as well as anybody else, and they know what these things say about Muhammad. Anyway,
yep.
The
yes? little side note along those lines. Talked to a woman. Talked to a woman who ran a house for Pakistani men, or some school or something like that. Anyway. She said that she got to the point where she could actually just sit around and have discussions with them. She's a old woman, having discussions with these Pakistani men who came to the U.S. from Pakistan and so on. Anyway, she eventually got to the point where she could have discussions with them and like find out about their lives and so on. Anyway, over a period of time, she finds out all these guys had been repeatedly molested by grown men when they were children, and that these guys view it as just a completely normal part of life. And so she said she's asking them questions and so on, and she finds out over time that they don't view that as gay. As long as it's a boy without a beard, as long as he's young and doesn't have a beard, they don't view you as gay for having sex with the young guy who doesn't have a beard.
And as long as you get married and have children, and you're not like in the West where they say, oh, this is a lifestyle and this is something that forms my identity and all that business. It's this as long as you are perpetuating the growth of the ummah, then you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but we do have cracks in the alliance, David. In New York City, we had the pro-Hamas protesters. First, they destroyed floats at the Pride Parade, and then they got down in front of it, as you can see here, and blocked the way. And so here are all the happy leftists there ready to see the Pride Parade, and all they get to see are the pro-Hamas people holding the Palestine flag. What do you think Queers for Palestine is going to do in such a situation?
I think they're going to remain completely loyal to Islam and to Hamas. I don't think they're going to. If you haven't learned the lesson by now, by the way, isn't this like the weirdest alliance you can even imagine? Well, I mean, you can't imagine a stranger alliance than this. You've got this group and you've got this group that ultimately wants to completely exterminate this group, and this group remains completely loyal to the ones who want to exterminate them. I mean, this would actually be like during World War II, like Jews for Nazis, Jews for Hitler, or something like that. That's what it would be like.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that well, let me ask you: do you think that at least in part it could be that they believe their own nonsense? And they think, well, there are a few extremists who might throw gays off buildings, but really, when you get down to it, they love us and will coexist.
Yeah, I'm guessing they may actually believe like that. I mean, after all, that's what everyone in the West has been bombarded with for decades now. That it's just a couple of extremists, and ignore the polls, Ignore the research that shows that massive numbers of people in the ordinary, regular Muslim population believe these things. We'll just say it's a few extremists. And so,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you hear that all your life, you never hear anything else, and the people who tell you anything else are smeared and vilified as Islamophobes and racists, then maybe you're going to believe it. And you think, well, if I
and
go ahead.
oh, yeah, I was just going to say, and it may be a situation where they think that, oh, even though you've got a few extremists who want to kill gays, we'll show that we're undyingly loyal to Islam, and this will melt their hearts, and then all the persecution against gays will stop. They'll completely rewrite Islamic law because we're nice to them and we're helping them slaughter the Jews.
Yeah, that's a very deeply ingrained assumption. That's actually the basis of American foreign policy. That if the United States goes over to various countries, whether Muslim or non Muslim, and gives them money and gives them stuff and builds roads and highways and hospitals, then they're going to be our friends. And that,
It worked. It worked in Iran. It worked in
yeah,
Iran. We showered them with money, and they responded with "Death to America, death to America, death to America." But they didn't really mean it.
yes. Look how much they love us, really.
Mhm.
But meanwhile, you said a minute ago, they're going to change Islamic law and everything is going to be okay. So that reminded me of the case of this gentleman here, uh, who is, he's got this great name, Al Hassan Ag Abdul Aziz Mahmoud Ahmad Ag Mahmoud. Anyway, he was, that is, the head of the Sharia police in Mali in 2012. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but in 2012 in Mali, there was sort of a proto-ISIS. ISIS, in its heyday in 2015 and 16, controlled a territory in Iraq and Syria larger than Great Britain. But in 2012, also an Al Qaeda linked group, Ansar Deen, they, not Sardine, that's Ansar Deen, Helpers of the
I like
Religion,
sardines.
not Ansar Deen. But they controlled a large expanse of Mali and imposed Sharia there. And so this guy, Al Hassan Ag, this and that, he was the head of the Sharia police. And he was just now, because these things go so slowly, he was just now convicted of subjecting women to rape, forced marriage, and sexual slavery. Now, the guy was a Sharia cop, David.
Hmm.
Surely he must have misunderstood Islam. Am I right?
Yeah, and he misunderstood it in exactly the same way. So many other Sharia experts have completely misunderstood it for 14 centuries. The most misunderstood religion, which is weird because Allah brags throughout the Quran that his revelations are perfectly clear, and yet everyone keeps completely misunderstanding them in exactly the same way. That's weird. But this does raise, I mean, this is a question I've raised to Muslims many times over the years. What's the difference? Practically speaking, what's the difference between a religion that actually calls for jihad and taking sex slaves and all these things? What's the difference between a religion that actually calls for those things and a religion that is so hopelessly confusing that it really, really sounds like it's calling for jihad and taking sex slaves and all these things, even though Allah means the opposite of what he actually says? So, in other words, what's the difference between a religion that actually calls for all these horrible things and a religion that isn't really calling for these things? It just really sounds like it is so that people keep doing it. Practically speaking, what's the difference? And I can't think of one. It's the exact same result. So whether Allah really meant it when he said wage jihad and take sex slaves and so on, whether he really meant it or he meant the opposite, he was off his meds and his Tourette's kicked in and he couldn't control what he was saying. Even if it's that, it's the exact same. We're in the exact same situation of having to deal with the giant mess.
Yep. You are correct, sir, but there's still always people who always have hope, David. And here are some of them. This is the staff of CNN Arabic and UN Women in Arab States. And you see only one hijab here, and a lot of women who are naked. That's terrible.
Need to get 5 more. Missing
But
5. 5 more.
5 more?
Need 5 more hijabs.
Yes, you're right. That's it.
I'll,
But
I will Photoshop that for you later, Robert. I'll take care of it.
they are renewing their partnership. They are at this picture taking, they are signing, you see, a memorandum of understanding to renew their partnership in 2022 that started in 2022. This is once again CNN Arabic and UN Women in the Arab States. And their partnership is designed to accelerate gender balance, financial inclusion, and female employment throughout the Arab states through 2026. And so, in pursuit of that, they are starting what they call 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Now, mind you, this is in Arab Muslim countries. So, what do you predict in terms of the success of this initiative?
I would hope they'd be successful, but good luck with that, ladies. I mean, to be fair, change is extremely slow in the Muslim world. It can happen. It can happen, just like we saw that women were suddenly allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia and so on. So change can happen. So I hope it happens, but I don't know. It seems that even if you get the changes that you want, Islam is still this retrograde force, because I mean the core message of Islam always has been that the creator of the universe is obsessed with everyone living, breathing, working, even going to the bathroom, speaking, everything like a 7th century Arab. That's what the creator of the universe wants you to do. He wants you to live like a 7th century Arab. So any progress you make, there's always that pullback, which ultimately destroys it. We saw it. We saw there were brief periods where science would take off in the Muslim world. Islam would suffocate it. There are periods when philosophy would take off in the Muslim world. Islam would suffocate it, because Islam is, the message is always just, hey, bring it back to the 7th century.
Mm-hmm. Bring it back to the pure Islam. Otherwise, any natural disaster, any economic or military or political setback can be attributed to discarding Islam, and then the remedy, of course, is more Islam.
Yeah,
All right.
that's exactly what would happen. Like, if these ladies were entirely successful and they just changed the status of women in the Muslim world, and then 5 months from now there's a big earthquake. You see, it's because of these women. Let's crush them.
Exactly. All right. We had this happen in Germany this past week, David. A tragic story. This is what's his name? Philippos Chanis, and he is a Greek German of Greek German descent or lineage. He was murdered in Germany recently because he was set upon by a Muslim mob. They attacked him because, as you can see in this photo, he is wearing a cross. And so he was beaten to death by a Muslim mob for wearing a cross. Now, why would wearing a cross set off a mob of Muslims in Germany?
It just seems that places like Germany import massive numbers of people who have zero respect for German law and believe that as long as they're there, they get to impose Sharia on people.
Indeed. And so Sharia hates the cross because Jesus did not die on the cross, and Muhammad predicts in the Hadith that Jesus will come back and break the cross because it's an insult to think that he would allow his prophet to be humiliated in this way. So here's this fellow wearing a cross, and that is an affront to Islam. And so he has to be killed. It's useful to keep in mind incidents of that kind, actually, when you think about the CNN United Nations initiative in the Muslim world that we were just talking about. That aside from the mockery that these women are opening themselves up to, there is the simple fact that they are in serious danger if they actually go to some places in the Islamic world. They could be killed for trying to modernize Islam's views toward women.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, you probably heard about this. We had great advance for feminism. We had at least 18 people killed in I believe the estimates are now quite a bit higher. My report, unfortunately, is from a few days ago, but in any case, at least 18 people killed in a string of suicide bombings. And the bombers targeted a wedding, a hospital, and a funeral in
And they
Borno
were women,
State.
weren't they?
That's exactly it, David. Not only were they women, but one of them had a little baby with her. Now, what's that all about?
Um, why wouldn't you want to? Right? I mean, we see this in Gaza, right? The people who are obsessed with martyrdom. And if you live your entire life as a Muslim, you have no assurance of salvation. Muhammad was told to say by Allah in the Quran that he doesn't know what Allah is going to do with him. So this is Muhammad in the Quran saying, I don't know what Allah will do with me. And it's important to note, you find out from the hadith that that is in reference to his salvation. A Muslim man named Uthman, this is not the Caliph Uthman, a different Uthman, a man named Uthman died. And a woman said, oh, great, he's in paradise now. And Muhammad said, what are you talking about? You don't know where he's at. She said, what are you talking about? He's one of the best of us. Muhammad said, you don't know what Allah's going to do with him. And she said, if he's not safe, then what's the status of the rest of us? And Muhammad said, I don't know what Allah is going to do with me. So Islam fosters this kind of paranoia about a God who's completely unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do, but he does give you one guarantee that if you die while waging jihad against the unbelievers, that's your one-way ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't a mother in Gaza want her kids to be killed, want her kids to be jihadis? Why wouldn't she? Why would a suicide bomber not bring a little baby along?
Indeed. And so the baby gets a one-way ticket along with the mother to paradise. In a similar vein, David, we had a rape case in France. And in this case, the rapists, they were originally reported as attacking this 12-year-old Jewish girl because she said bad things about Palestine. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. That's just what they said. Now, later on, it came out that before they let her leave after this gang rape, this 12-year-old girl, they made her swear on Allah not to say anything. And they asked her, I know you're not Muslim, so what religion are you? And she was Jewish. When they learned this, they tried to convert her to Islam. Now, a lot of people in the West just have no idea. They cannot understand in the slightest degree why somebody would rape someone and then try to convert them to their religion. And these people are crazy, right? Or is there some other explanation?
No, I mean, that's kind of the message of Islam. We're going to keep slaughtering you, slaughtering your men, raping your women, and so on until you all convert. And so if you want to end the killing and the raping and so on, just convert. Simple solution, right? But Islam has always had this mafia gang type mentality where you're joining it for your protection. And then, of course, there's always arguments as well that argue that, hey, this is just about pure monotheism and so on. What's interesting is that over the past few years, all of their main arguments, they now acknowledge were completely bogus. So the perfect preservation of the Quran, they now acknowledge that was a bunch of nonsense. It was all deception. The scientific miracles, they now acknowledge was just complete deception. So they're acknowledging that their arguments that they used to convert people to Islam were bogus. Well, what's left? All that's left at this point is like the gang mentality of, hey, we're in your area. We're going to keep messing with you, raping you, bullying you, beating you up, torturing, killing, whatever we have to do. We're going to keep doing this until you all convert. And guess what? There are people who will convert. I mean, if you go to prison and 60% of the prison population is Muslim and they start beating you up as soon as you get there, telling you to convert, there are going to be people who convert. But notice that sort of conversion is the exact same thing as joining a gang. It's the exact same thing as joining a gang. So what we're seeing now and what we're going to see in the future is It's always had this, well, it's a religion but it's also a gang, it's a religion but it's also a gang. It's gonna be dialed up that you're basically joining a big gang, because the arguments that this is about pure monotheism and all this stuff, that's all falling apart. So anyway, it's the world's biggest gang.
You know, it's worth noting also that when you mention the mafia, that it's a mafia gang mentality. Well, the mafia originated in Sicily, and the Muslims occupied Sicily for a couple hundred years back in the 9th century, 10th century. So I think it's very possible that these things do indeed come out of it. That you have this secrecy about what it's all about. You kill people if they leave, etc., etc. Loyalty to the group above all. It's interesting thing worth pursuing. All right, we had an ISIS cell in Canada, eh? These guys, they were up there in Tim Hortons, plotting
Yep.
jihad. Eh?
Hey, let's meet up at Tim Hortons, eh? All right, bring the
We're gonna
maple syrup.
blow up some stuff, eh? And so this Canadian group of jihadis, you see the middle guy, he's a convert. I think you can tell because he's bit of a ginger type, looks like. And in any case, he was part of the gang, and this group, they plotted to murder an entire family because they found out that they were an ISIS cell, and so they it's kind of connected to this mafia thing that the somebody finds out about you, you take care of the problem, you murder them. And so they actually went on a shooting spree at this takeout restaurant, Chicken Land, in Mississauga, Ontario, outside of Toronto. But they did not. They targeted the whole family. They don't. I don't believe they killed the whole family.
Well,
Anyway,
this goes back to what we were saying earlier. That I mean, think of, you got these guys in Canada, Muslims, convert, and they somehow come to the exact same conclusions about what they're supposed to do as Muslims as so many other Muslims in different parts of the world. And that's we've brought this up a million times when we say, look at all this jihad. Where's this idea coming from? Is it coming from the Muslim sources, which we can quote to you? And we got the response for years. For about a decade, we got the response, oh, but look at Westboro Baptist Church, which wasn't going around killing anyone. They were just a bunch of doofuses protesting soldiers' funerals and stuff like that. But Robert, when Westboro Baptist Church announced what they were doing, how many people did you see gathering from, how many Christians did you see from across the world, from Europe and Africa and everyone rushing to join with Westboro Baptist Church? Zero. That's what you saw. That's what you saw. Why? Because you can always have some weird idea from some particular group, and it's just because someone in that group had a weird idea and was able to convince the people around him, doesn't mean that other people in other parts of the world are going to come to that same conclusion. Nevertheless, when ISIS says, hey, we're a caliphate, we're going to wage jihad and slaughter the unbelievers, suddenly Muslims from America, Canada, Great Britain, France, Germany, everywhere around the world starts flooding into the country. Why? They all had the same ideas. And they're like, finally, someone's coming along and doing it. This is what we've been waiting for. It's like, where did they all get the same exact idea about what they're supposed to do as Muslims? I'm still waiting for an answer to that question, because until I get a different answer, it seems like the reason they all come to the same conclusion is that they're reading the same books.
yep. And the books are actually clear on these issues, even if they aren't as clear as they claim to be on others. Speaking of which, we have a guy, he went a little too far. Did you see this character? This guy is in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And he is apparently the local imam there, although his manner of dress for his khutbah is a little bit unconventional. His name, I don't know. If anybody knows the name of the imam at the mosque in Lafayette, Louisiana, please let me know. If you know this gentleman. But in any case, this guy is on video at the indispensable Middle East Media Research Institute, MEMRI, and he says this: O Allah, our Lord, they are waging jihad for your sake. O Allah, they are waging jihad for your sake. O Allah, O Lord of mankind, grant them victory, etc., etc. O Allah, annihilate the Jews and the Crit. And then he stopped. Because, of course, he stopped too late anyway. He should have known he was still going to be on This Week in Jihad.
Wait, yeah, yeah. It was one of these situations. Oh Allah, annihilate the Jews and the. Hey, is that camera on? Is that camera on? Turn that camera off right now and let me finish.
But it's interesting to note that he actually, after he stopped himself, he went on and he said, "Oh Allah, annihilate the Jews and their helpers, for they are no match for you." Now, even that, going on to say, annihilate the Jews, this is something we would never see until October 7th. And now it's, I think, because hatred of Jews has become mainstream in so many ways among so many people nowadays that he feels free to say that. But it's still a bridge too far for him to say annihilate the Christians. He'll get to that later on.
Yeah, he's still probably one of these guys that we'll form temporary alliances with anyone among the Christians who we can dupe into siding with us. So we don't want to marginalize the Christians just yet. We want to use them first.
Indeed, and the Christians are so willing. They really, they have no clue, and so they go along. Let me see if I have. I think I have some Christians. Maybe not. No Christians. But I do have another imam who is not happy about some of these alliances, even though, as you just very, very well put it, in terms of we will use these people are still useful to us, and so we will continue the appearance of this alliance. This guy is... Oh, that's not even the right one. Huh. Wrong anti-gay photo. Hang on.
There are so many to choose from.
Yeah. I gotta find a more efficient way to do this. But anyway, I'm just gonna have to go ahead. This guy is in California, Culver City, the King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, California. And he says that we as Muslims, of course, we know that the lifestyle that these people live is a lifestyle of disgust, evil, deviance, and immorality. And I should note here that when they say things like this, a lot of Christians, a lot of other people say, well, yeah. And they don't approve of it any more than the imam here does, Ahsan Syed. And so they are sympathetic to what he says. But we have to remember also, at the same time, we're not talking about a moral disapproval. We're talking about something much larger, because it ultimately ends with execution. And this is something that Christians and others would say that's going too far. But anyway, David, he says, we will never support them. We will never support their lifestyle. And we want them to just leave us and our children alone. So much damage has been done by the alliances that these so-called Muslim organizations have made with these people. So I think this alliance is not long for this world.
Yeah, I've seen the Muslims since October 7th. I've seen the Muslims who complain, hey, we've got Queers for Palestine and LGBTQ stuff at our rallies against Israel, and bringing it up as a reason, possibly even the main reason, they keep losing against the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue was, hey, how do you expect Allah to bless us to conquer the Jews and to conquer the world when we're forming alliances with all these groups that Allah hates? So what's going on? What's going on here? And so you have Muslims who actually think the reason they're losing is because LGBTQ stuff is at their rallies and so on. So anyway, if that happens to be true, great job, Queers for Palestine.
Yeah, it's a Zionist plot, David. Clearly the Zionists sent them in. Meanwhile, speaking of Zionists, we have this charming gentleman here. and he is Anas Saleh. And he was the guy who went on a subway car in New York City, and he called out that anybody who was a Zionist raised their hand. And he said that all the Zionists should leave the car. Raise your hand if you're a Zionist. Repeat after me. This is your chance to get out. And so it's clear that he was threatening violence to anybody who was foolish enough to identify himself as a Zionist on this subway car. Anyway,
Gosh, wish I was there. Now, here, sport.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You got to take cameras in. But it turns out that he worked at Cornell University at Weill Cornell Medicine's Lab, and he was apparently removed. It's not clear whether he still works there. His page was taken off their employee site, which does suggest that he no longer works there, but it might just be that they took his picture down until the heat's off. In any case, Robert Harrington, the dean of Weill Cornell Medicine, he issued a statement, and he said, "We condemn anti-Semitism in the strongest possible terms. Hate speech or actions of any kind, whether anti-Semitic or Islamophobic."
Islamophobic?
Yes. What's the deal, David? Why does he have to drag that in?
Oh, of course. You gotta make it look like it's this is happening everywhere, and it is funny though. My first question: I would love it if these guys would just take Q&A when they say things like this. When they say, "Oh, we condemn anti-Semitism wherever it may be found." Okay, let me quote you this hadith here from the Prophet Muhammad. He said that the end will not come until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Jews are hiding behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees are calling out, "Hey, Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." Do you condemn that? And watch these people shrivel up in fear, because they would not condemn Muhammad for calling for the extermination of Jews. They wouldn't dare, because that would be Islamophobic, and that's just as bad.
Indeed. Oh my goodness, such craziness in the world. But yes, so the guy, he's threatening Jews on the subway, and his employer, or former employer, warns us against Islamophobia.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just like every terrorist attack carried out in the name of Islam for decades. What do we hear right after the attack? Oh, we need to warn everyone against a backlash against the Muslim community. So this is a time to warn the world about Islamophobia.
Oh yeah. So many times I saw that.
Like clockwork.
And the local imam in the city where the attack happened saying, "We request greater police protection," and getting it. Because the authorities never thought critically about any of this, ever.
And then every news program gets Muslims on to say, "You see, look, this Muslim doesn't approve of that." And then the Muslims use that opportunity to preach Islam and do dawah and so on. So the real takeaway is, the more people you slaughter in the name of Allah, the more exposure we'll give you to preach Islam, and the more converts you'll win. So it's in your best interest to slaughter and rape as many of the kuffar as possible, because the more you do it, the more our politicians and journalists will defend and promote your prophet.
Indeed.
Great message, smart message.
And so, I should have mentioned this earlier. Oh, that's not the one. Yeah. I'm having trouble with the photos tonight here, David. Somewhere there's a photo, but anyway, maybe this is it. Yeah, it's not a very clear photo, but this is actually a recent gang attack in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where a couple of lesbians were out having a birthday dinner for one of them. And they were apparently identified as such and set upon by a Muslim mob and beaten. As you can see, there's one woman down on the ground there, and they were both severely beaten. They were attacked by 7 to 10 Syrian migrants. Now, here again, this I think this is bringing into sharp relief this cognitive dissonance between reality and what people imagine about Islam in the West.
Well, Robert, what this really shows is that we here at Queers for Palestine need to be even more loyal and faithful to our fellow Muslim victims, because we have to do more so that their hearts eventually melt. It's the only way forward.
That's it. Anyway, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. That's
You know
perfect.
what? You know what? I'm about to head to a conference with Vocab Malone and the Apostate Prophet. I'm thinking we might just have to record a little episode titled "Muhammad Meets Queers for Palestine."
Great idea. Fantastic. Get the real ones.
Yeah, we'll get real ones. They'll be even better. They'll be even better than us being a parody.
That's right. They will actually. I would love to see how they react to that. You know, if you have vocab as Muhammad reading them what Muhammad actually said,
Mm-hmm.
and see what are they going to say? Oh, he didn't mean it, and he
No,
would
they're
just
going to
like,
say, but we know that you're really one of us."
yes,
Look, how could you be covered in all this semen and all these hadiths?
there you go.
Been there, done that.
Okay, moving right along, we got Pakistan here, David. Now, this actually reminded me when I saw this story of something you have said several times on other shows that uh, when we have the rape gangs in Britain and elsewhere for that matter, and they are prosecuted, they're never remorseful. And you have noted that, of course, they're not remorseful because they're carrying out the commands of Allah. And this is why it's something that is taken for granted as being something that's good. There's nothing wrong with it. And so you have fathers and sons taking part, and they call their cousins and so on. And everybody is joining in, and nobody thinks, this is this terrible thing. So this is actually a different story that I thought was quite similar in the sense that it's not about the rape gangs, but it's the same phenomenon. What we have here is this is a story out of Pakistan, and in Punjab, a teenager stabbed to death a 55-year-old man who he accused of speaking ill of the companions of Muhammad. So this was a Sunni Shiite thing because the companions of Muhammad are those that the Shiites disapprove of because they passed over Ali several times and didn't make him caliph after Muhammad died. And so often you find Shia disparaging Aisha and Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and others, saying that they were essentially apostates for passing over the man who Muhammad supposedly chose to be his successor. So anyway, the point being that this Shiite man apparently, supposedly, blasphemed against the companions of Muhammad, and the teenager stabs him to death. But it came to light that his father, the teenager's father, is an imam, a Sunni imam, and he incited the son to kill the Shiite.
Hmm.
Didn't he think it was terrible to incite his son to murder?
How old did you say the kid was?
A teenager, it says. It doesn't. I don't think it gives his exact age. Oh no,
Yeah, that.
14. He's 14.
Oh, yeah, that's one of those situations, Robert. Very familiar with that situation. If you want a crime to be committed, you can always get a younger person to do it for you because they'll be treated with more leniency. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, if you want to go kill someone and you know you'll get in trouble for it, but if you send in your 14-year-old son to do it, you know he's going to get a slap on the wrist because he's only 14. Then you have him do it for you. And why wouldn't you? I mean, this is if something happens to him, he'll be blessed by Allah for what he's done. But let me go ahead and say here to any Sunnis who are watching, Abu Bakr's a dumb loser. So's Umar. So Zuthman, bunch of dumb, stupid losers supporting the most obvious false prophet in history. What kind of waste of life are you when you dedicate your entire life to serving the most obvious false prophet in history? Now, come get me. Bring an army. Don't bring some 14-year-old because he'll lose.
I love it. Let's see. Once again, I don't want to waste a lot of time here trying to find pictures that I have poorly organized, but goodness. I have this story, this very interesting story out of Hezbollah. And Hezbollah's foreign relations minister, Khalil Rizk, he says that the Jews have religious worship. But today in Israel, when a Jew is standing in front of the Wailing Wall, his worship instructs him to oppress people, to shed the blood of the Palestinians, and to drive these people out of Palestine. This is his worship. My worship tells me other things. It tells me to seek freedom and independence, to support the oppressed, and to stand by these nations, even if they do not follow the same religion as ours. Do you think he was totally on the level?
On the level of either lying or stupid, yeah.
Yeah, but also projecting, no? I mean,
Yeah.
the idea that his religion teaches him to respect people of other religions and so on, while the Jews' religion instructs him to oppress people and drive these people out of Palestine. I thought, well, I only know of one scripture that says drive them out from where they drove you out, and that's the Quran, chapter 2, verse
Yeah.
191.
Yeah, we've seen endless projection since October 7th. It's always the Jews are plotting to take over the world, and they want to take over every place that they don't control, and they want to kill people who get in their way. I was like, it sounds like you're saying they're exactly like what Islam teaches.
Mm-hmm.
And you're Muslims complaining that this is what they believe when it's exactly what you believe. Anyway.
Massive projection. And, of course, the infidels fall for it because the infidels believe their religion of peace nonsense. So this is David Jehdo, L-L-E-D-O, Jehdo, out of Spain. And he was killed this past week by another Muslim mob because he was trying to stop them from raping a 15-year-old girl. And they turned on him and beat him to death. And this has caused quite a lot of anger in Spain. And there are demonstrations in Spain saying that he was assassinated and that these migrants from places where this kind of behavior is acceptable, they have to be stopped from coming into the country and so on. But here again, it's the same phenomenon, is it not? That they were trying to do something that they thought was completely in line with their religion, no?
Mm-hmm.
So, who is he to interfere?
Yep. Shame on him.
Our friend Tariq al-Suwaidan is back in the news. And he is a notorious Islamic preacher, internationally famous. And he's, like Zakir Naik and others, quite revealing in many ways about what Islam is really all about. He is a Muslim Brotherhood leader out of Kuwait. He openly preaches jihad. And he says one of the promises of the Prophet is that Judgment Day will not happen until Islam prevails. And we become victorious and we will rule the whole world. It's up to you to believe or not, but the companions truly believed, and I hope that we truly believe, not in geopolitics, but in the promise of the Prophet.
Hey, speaking about those companions, they were pure garbage, bunch of losers.
What are you, a Shiite?
Yeah. Yeah. But at this point, isn't it getting like pathetic at this point? We will rule the world. What planet do you live on, dude? Like what planet? I mean, seriously, in the early centuries of Islam, where Islam was expanding rapidly and so on, you could get the idea, hey, look, we're expanding so rapidly, we're going to take over the world. Eventually you got to Europe and Europeans drove you back. Eventually you got to India, and it worked for a while, but eventually it's not working out anymore. The expansion stopped, and then you eventually lost your caliphate. So you're talking 20th century. They lose their caliphate. They had a caliphate the entire time, and then all of a sudden they didn't even have a caliphate anymore. And they keep trying to bring back the caliphate, and then it crumbles and gets crushed every time. And now they're running around whining, "Oh, we're the victims. We're the victims. Let's become partners with the LGBTQ community. Yeah, we're going to take over the world." It's like a joke at this point. Like, guys, how do you plan on doing this? How could you possibly at this point think that you're going to take over the world?
Well,
Any
one thing, David, though, really, I understand on the one hand because the Dawa's caving in, as you noted earlier. Islam is more vulnerable to challenge than it's ever been in history because of the internet, because of shows like this one, because of the other shows that you do, because of the books that I've written, because of the many efforts of many people who are exposing the howling falsity and evil of this thing. But also, in the West, you have so many idiots. It's easy, I think, for them to become confident and think, well, we're going to take over in the West. I mean, look at Britain.
Yeah, but even that, I understand them getting the idea, like, oh, look how stupid these guys are. The more we kill and rape them, the more they support our religion. I get them wanting to take advantage of Western stupidity. The problem for them is the Western stupidity has its limits, and you've seen some people waking, you've seen lots of people waking up um, in Europe. But the point is, even if Westerners were remained as stupid as possible, Islam still doesn't win and take over the world. Every place they take over, they turn into a cesspool of interreligious violence, slaughtering each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, they're broken into endless groups, and they all start killing and fighting each other. And so you could say, here, Muslims, take Germany. They'll ruin it. They'll ruin the entire place, turn it into a Sharia compliant hellhole, and then everyone's going to have to flee Germany. I'm talking Muslims. Muslims will have to flee Germany, and they'll say, we're being persecuted by these other Muslims, and these other Muslims are running these things. We have to run. And so their only real hope of anything is not conquering the world. It's just ruining the world. It's just, hey, we're going to ruin everything. But okay, fine, but you're not ruling anything because you've become agents of chaos.
Well, that's very well put. But speaking of ruining everything, this is Adel Abdelbari, and he was an aide to Osama bin Laden, who was involved in terror attacks against U.S. embassies. He served 20 years in prison, and he is now out of prison, and he's returned to Britain, where he is living in a taxpayer-funded residence.
Must be nice.
And he has said that he wants to mentor Muslim children.
I bet
Which,
he does. I bet he wants to do all kinds of things to Muslim children and non-Muslim children.
well,
Just like his
yeah,
prophet.
but you know he may well get to do that because the British authorities are so idiotic.
And by the way, that's something we also used to point out a lot when we were talking about ISIS and so on. And you had all these people going from Canada and the US and Great Britain and France and Germany, and they all go down to fight for ISIS. And then ISIS loses, and all these people, they start coming back to their countries. And a lot of these people, their countries don't know exactly what they did. They know they went down and did something for ISIS. They don't know what they were doing down there. And so they charge them with providing material support to a terrorist organization or something like that. And they sentence them to like 7 years or 10 years or something like that. Guess what? Those people are coming home. Those people are being released. You have people who fought for ISIS walking the streets of Great Britain and the US and so on. And of course, people like this who they get sentenced for a while, they do 10 years, they do 20 years and so on. And then they're right back in society, having their way with little children.
What could go wrong?
Nothing, absolutely nothing, Robert.
And so there are just so many stupid infidels, David. These are not two of them, though. This is Sheikh Yusuf Al Qaradawi, of course, who died a few years ago, but before that, he was the most influential, most widely known, most revered sheikh in the entire world. He wrote a book about what was forbidden and permitted in Islam that is still widely read. And he is with Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, who is over on the left. Abdullah bin Baya he has been a preacher of jihad. He has said this, that jihad is jihad. Oh, I'm sorry. The first meaning of jihad, he says, includes what is done by physical power, which is striving against people. This is the most widespread meaning. It is jihad against non-Muslims in the sense of fighting and engaging in war. That's Abdullah bin Baya. He was a close friend of Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who praised Hitler, who predicted the Muslim conquest of Europe, all these things. Now, why am I bringing out these people? Because the American Jewish Committee in September 2023, right before October 7th, gave its Human Dignity Award to Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya. Now, it just seems to me that this involves a massive case of willful ignorance, of a refusal to look at the record. Because it's not as if this guy's association with Qaradawi was secret, or his writings about violent jihad. But maybe they didn't think. Of course, they don't know that the jihad against Israel is a jihad. So they don't realize that any of that applies. Meanwhile, we have the Islamic Education Center in Maryland. And right after the president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, died in a plane crash recently, they had a memorial service for him in this Shiite mosque in Maryland. And so now people are saying, wait a minute, they had a memorial service for Raisi? Maybe we better look into their ties to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Why, this could be a matter of concern. But, you know, what do you think, David? Do you think they have... Is it possible they could have ties to the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Wait, I mean, there's some slim chance anything could be connected to anything else for all we know, Robert. But isn't that dude? Didn't they call him like the butcher of something? Or what did
Yeah,
they
the
call him?
butcher of Tehran, I believe.
Oh wow, huh? You definitely want to celebrate him here in what'd you say, Maryland?
Maryland, yep. He went to war against his own people, killed many people after the Islamic Revolution. Anyway, there's no end to it, David. This is Suleiman Atayi, and he is seen there in the act. You see his knife there. He's the one who stabbed the Islam critic Michael Sturzenberger in Germany a few weeks ago. And he also stabbed a policeman in the neck, and the policeman later died. And now he is he's in a hospital, of all places, and the German authorities are baffled, David, because he is being nasty and mean to the hospital staff, and he shows no remorse for his attack, and they just can't understand this. Now, why would he show no remorse? Surely he should be full of remorse, no? That he actually killed a man?
The only remorse that dude would have is not getting killed and dying while waging jihad. That's the only remorse. Other than that, he's proud of that. He's proud of what he did. I mean,
And we are proud of that.
he views himself as a massive success. I mean, he took out a German police officer. These guys love destabilizing governments in the places they go to. And so, I mean, he views himself as a hero. What would he have to be sad about? The real problem here is still, to this day, Westerners thinking that other people think like them.
Yes,
And
that's
that's
it.
just it's as far as I can tell, that is the biggest problem in the world right now, is everyone thinking that everyone else is just going to naturally, by nature, think like them. And they keep screwing up based on that stupid idea.
Indeed. And yet, the German authorities, their balloon never lands. They never get it. These things happen over and over, and they keep sending them to mental hospitals because they can't acknowledge that there's a jihad. So they have to classify it as something. And they send these guys to mental hospitals. Then they expect them to behave the way Westerners behave when they commit murders, and they don't, and they can't figure it out. I got to
Mhm.
give you one more, David, before we go. I couldn't believe this one, but on the other hand, I could because it's just so crazy. Sheikh Asif Ali was sentenced to life in prison in India for raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl. Now, raping and murdering a 6-year-old girl, you and I know in Islam, if she's a kuffar, that kind of thing, there's just not a big problem there. You know, especially the rape part. Maybe he gets a slap on the wrist for the murder, but she's an infidel. Come on, big deal. Uh, Now, the Orissa High Court in India, they said that they were commuting his death sentence. And he no longer has the death sentence because he prays 5 times a day.
Oh,
And he surrendered to Allah, they said.
oh, okay. Well, definitely free pass then for all these guys who are raping and slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah. They pray. Yeah,
See,
they pray to the God. They pray to the God who tells them they can do these things.
the Indian authorities are proceeding here again on the assumption that everybody thinks like them, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And that they figure, well, he must be sorry because he's praying,
Mm-hmm.
which he ain't sorry if his God told him to do it.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, that's the jihad for this week, ladies and gentlemen. It's a grim picture, but we have to remember that ultimately the truth and the right will become clear and will be undeniable. And in the meantime, through the cross comes after the cross comes the resurrection. And so persevere, don't give up, never give in. Pray, hope, and don't worry. And we'll likely see you next week.